what might the power, threat, meaning model have to do with Lindsay Clancy's life? Well, we know she would say, look, I'll never be me again. Things will never ever be the same. I will never ever be the same. And that's true for every woman. One day you're a person, just yourself, you're Lindsay the woman, and someone desirable as a wife, as a vibrant young person, as someone with options in their career, just on a trajectory of sorts where you've got autonomy too. You can make decisions about travel and career and where you live and that sort of thing, right? And it's pretty carefree, even if you're sort of looking toward the future and wanting to plan things. And then the next you are mother, and that seems to be what a lot of people, women, feel like. Now I am mother, that's it, mother. As if it's a blanket that shrouds them and they're not seen except through that blanket, through that veil of motherhood. But that's a fact, isn't it? Just because it's not going to be the same though doesn't mean it can't be good or that you can't regain a sense of your own self. But of course that is difficult when your children are young. And Lindsay, another threat is this third baby. She's probably been able to have a little bit of a handle on it and found a little bit more equilibrium after Cora and Dawson. And then Kellen is born, and she's got the issue of when to finish breastfeeding, when to wean the baby so that she can return to work, something she's feeling a lot of pressure about. And she's really threatened by the bonding with this baby, or rather the lack of it. She's suffering a loss of identities as far as her career as well. Will I ever be a nurse again? Or when I go back to being a nurse, will I be as good at it? What can I bring to the table now that I'm a mother, but I feel like a failure as a mother? So how can I go in and be a labour and delivery nurse? What am I going to do about my career? And if I take any more time away, am I going to get to, further my career, maybe into leadership, management, that sort of thing, And on top of that, she's exhausted, and you just lose a sense of ability to cope. You can lose your sense on reality when you're exhausted. That happens to anyone. She seemed to have a lot of shame and be very secretive, and whether this is because a perfectionist sensibility, she was ashamed about not coping, about thinking certain thoughts, about a labour and delivery nurse who had these difficult births and who doesn't want to leave her baby, but also didn't feel she was bonding with this baby. And it's very confusing. I mean, she could be in complete denial about how dangerous her situation is. She could be in denial about just how sick she is, because maybe she was feeling a lot more deeper, more dangerous thoughts earlier on than September. Kellen was born in May, and she's the one saying that she's got postpartum depression. So as a labour and delivery nurse, and she knows when this comes on and what that entails, and is it that she hid things for as long as possible? She's grieving loss of the way her friendships can be managed, the loss of income. She was very concerned about using up family money. But she didn't seem to seek the right help either. For some reason, Lindsay Clancy, who is in the healthcare profession herself, she's chosen to go to a psychiatrist. And we know that psychiatrists are medical doctors essentially, because they are medical doctors who can prescribe these serious classes of drugs. And as Dr. Tufts points out, most psychiatrists now work as teams. They will have, therapists, other sort of people there to do actual counselling. Lindsay wasn't doing the counselling. I think she had 2 counselling sessions. Tufts has recommended counselling, tried to get her onto natural therapies. Lindsay didn't go to an ob-gyn. She didn't go to a nutritionist. She didn't go and say, hey, could you take my blood tests and let's see where I'm at with my vitamin and mineral levels. And often those are the things that really get screwed up after birth. And again, as the particular type of nurse she was, Lindsay knows this, but she's gone for the psychiatric style care. Look, does that point to the fact that she knew her mental health was much darker than she was letting on, than just having these intrusive thoughts? I mean, she had said to her father she wanted to commit suicide. She had said, I want to die and it doesn't bother me. Her parents came and stayed early December and insisted she goes to see practitioner nurse Jolata in person. And she'd already taken herself to hospital. She'd driven herself to hospital. She was jittery. She wasn't having a good time in November. But she didn't disclose that she took a gummy, a THC gummy, to them. When she's gone to hospital on December the 31st, she was transported without Patrick over to Maclean's. Lindsay, as a nurse, would know that that is the time of year when institutes are under the most strain and the least staff, in a way. It was a weekend, it was New Year's Eve. The new facility isn't going to be able to get records easily, and that might take 2, 3, 4 days anyway. On a good day, okay, in the medical field, patients can give permission, and treatment centres send records all the time, even just, patient health summaries, right? But Lindsay knew it was a Saturday. She was there for Sunday. She was seen by a psychiatrist on the Monday, but she had spoken to people on the Saturday and the Sunday. She had had an intake. She'd been with social workers. She'd done group therapy. So she was getting care. All she needed to do was stay in hospital, but she was there as a Schedule 10, as I've said. So she could leave, and she did, and she shouldn't have. And part of Patrick's trial, he was understanding that it was just December where the intrusive thoughts were coming in. She was worried about the kids' health. She thought Cora might have a liver problem. She had thoughts of harming the children and was saying, look, there's no plan, but yes, it is disturbing to me. And I just feel that Patrick should have insisted that she stay in hospital. Now, that is notwithstanding that maybe she is a sociopath, okay, because that's the other side of the things. I think people are trying to decide. It's really splitting people, this case. I don't envy the jury, and that's what a lot of comments says. We don't envy the jury. But, what about antisocial personality disorder? What the prosecutors are trying to get at, to convince the jury that Lindsay Clancy was creating a defense for herself. So setting up a series of events, setting up a series of medical records. And why? I mean, I don't know, just to remove the children and to go back to being just herself, being Lindsay Clancy, young, attractive, vibrant woman who could do what she wants when she wants, go to work without worrying about her who she's leaving behind, because she'd said it's unnatural to leave your child. A sociopath would think, well, what's the solution to that? Well, if you don't have the child, okay, that's it's hard to imagine, but that, because if you're not a sociopath, it's hard to believe those types of thought processes. Retribution to Patrick. I mean, he's just so happy-go-lucky. He's taking Rosa to San Diego. He's taking her on skiing trips. He's enjoying his life with his friends, seemingly in the same way in context that he did before he was a father, except he's got this extra puffed uppedness. You know, he would be leaving little Callan. He would revel in Callan being heard over his Zoom calls, burbling and gurgling away in the background, because, you know, this gave him an extra dimension of father. So, you know, maybe he's just a bit of a, I don't know, sort of a shallow, happy-go-lucky person that Lindsay resented, because when the going got tough, you know, things just were coming out even Steven for him all the time. His life was essentially the same, where she would never be herself again. Calculating with the time frames, you know, to go to the hospital at New Year's Eve, and knowing it's difficult to access records, so, you know, they can only go by what's disclosed, and you might not believe that, but that is a lot of what is involved with care, you know, and out of shame or deception, who knows. So she was kind of treatment resistant in terms of rejecting therapy, rejecting a hospital stay, which could have saved the lives of her children, resisting using medication properly, whereas people are saying, well, the doctors were resisting listening to her about how it was affecting her, and resistant to other sorts of suggestions. And, you know, I really want to know, does she recall doing the crimes, or was she told and then therefore believes it? You know, was this psychosis a one-off because she heard that voice at the time, then never again? And, you know, these command hallucinations, or they are terrifying, but do you just act the first time you hear it, the first time you walk over a bridge and it says, go and do a jump, the time is now? I mean, generally you'll be tortured for a long time by these things before you're desperate enough to do it. So, you know, maybe she was desperate enough, or maybe it's contrived. Psychosis, you know, it does wax and wane. And is that what's happening with her now? And this diagnosis of severe bipolar that she has now, it doesn't necessarily mean that practitioners were lax. Sometimes these things aren't necessarily easy to diagnose, and there's a lot going on with Lindsay. She's telling them some things and maybe not others. Some things are observable, some aren't. And anyone with a diagnosis of such things, they probably know they actually went through quite a lot before they got that diagnosis, and maybe other things were thought of before that. So, yeah, it's a case that is really messing with people. They're not sure what to think. They think one thing one day, another the next. They feel compassion one day, and then contempt the next. It's frightening people. I think it frightens people, and rightly so. And unless you're in someone's head, Lindsay's, Patrick's, the care practitioners, her family and friends, I mean, we all know what that's like. No one is in our own head. So, yeah. sociopathy or actual psychosis, and do either of them mean that she is should be not guilty as far as being not culpable, should get some treatment and then possibly be let out? The prosecution should be concentrating on, did she know what was wrong, and why are they trying to worry about convincing the jury that she wasn't trying to commit suicide? Because I think they're trying to show that it was a very long build-up. It was a plan all along to kill her children. You see comments like, oh, and so, but why didn't she kill Patrick? Well, it's hard. Oysters kill Patrick. It's harder to kill a grown man, isn't it? That's quite big and violent. People tend to, in psychosis, people tend to kill family members, but people also tend to kill those that are more vulnerable than them. Anywho, speak to you later.